For quite a while, I felt that the discourse on design leadership is somewhat dominated by a small group of individuals, typically men, typically white. With this series, I aim to elevate new voices to take stage in the discussion on design leadership. I can promise you there is going to be a lot new to learn. Design Voices Elevated is a short video series curated by me, Marzia Arico. In this episode, we are in London meeting Öznur Özkurt. Welcome everyone to Design Voices Elevated. Today I'm with Öznur in London. Where are we, Öznur, today?
We are at Genomics England offices in Canary Wharf.
So as you know, I usually start my interviews with one question, which is, what's your story?
My story? I was born in Turkey to two parents who are both teachers. That story started back in the 80s, and I moved around a lot in the country. There were a lot of books, like we do in the office as well. And my parents really loved learning and education and all of that stuff, which infused me with a love of learning. I went to university to study economics, because that's what you did if you were good at school in Turkey. But funny enough, I then fell in love with computers, and this was back in the early 2000s when Flash was a big thing and everyone was making things with Flash, and it was so exciting to be able to create things that moved. And I thought, there's something interesting in here. So I thought maybe this is something I could do as a job, and no one in my family knew anything about technology at the time. My dad was really worried that I would be a suffering artist and, not the kind of quite the bright future they imagined for their daughter. Luckily, things turned out to be a bit different. Thank you, Internet. I then went on to do a master's as well in the interaction design field. I went to Italy, studied there for a couple of years, and then got my first job in London, and kind of just followed my nose through my career, I would say. Ended up here, worked in a product design firm that also did interaction design. I was just really enthused by, how people use things and how can we make those things better, and that I even got a chance to have an effect on how things were being made and how experiences were being shaped. That really, really excited me. And I think, I just, like I said, followed my nose through many different industries with a curiosity and a curious mind to say, what do I want to feel like learning? What do I wonder about the world? And really loved kind of using design as a vehicle to get into different places. And the last place I got into was health as a space, and that really, really interested me, both I think from values perspective. I really believe in, making things good for people. Also kind of brings in my passion around enterprise design, which is quite interesting actually, because I really like complex systems and complexity in my design work, almost like solving a puzzle. And I think in healthcare, it's a very different, it's a very complex ecosystem of, human needs, business needs, technology, science. It all kind of comes together and it constantly evolves. That really piqued my curiosity, and I've kind of been in this field now for the past 7 years, and it doesn't get boring one day. So I'm really, really excited to be here.
I know that you were at Google before and now you are at Genomics England. In what way your object of design or your designing has changed from one place to the other? Because they're quite different places, right?
They are really different. And even at Google, it's a big company, and I've had 3 different careers at Google. And my last more comparable work, I think, was in health. And there we were looking at, our primary focus was a clinician-facing product and essentially a service then that went alongside of it that we provided to NHS. But at Genomics England, and that was one product. And obviously we had different projects that were in the more incubation phases. We were looking at population health, or there were teams looking at medical imaging and AI. And it was kind of varied, but my main focus as a design leader was this application that we worked on called Streams, that we deployed at NHS with 2 hospitals, and that was very product focused. At Genomics England, we provide many different services to the UK public, and so focus has kind of shifted from being a single product and how do we take this and create the future for this and where do we take it to? From that to we're delivering several services, we're creating new services, we're maintaining new services, and everything else that the service requires, from product to operations to touch points and everything else in between. So my focus, I think, I stepped back, and it's a much wider lens at the moment. Still in health, but it's a much bigger scope. Yeah.
You talked about complex systems before, and I guess today in a lot of sectors of organizations, people have to deal with complex and ambiguous systems. In what way is design relevant in such context?
I think we bring a lot of clarity, and I trained as a visual designer, and I think earlier in my career I almost thought that was not necessarily a good thing to be proud of, but the more I kind of have had experiences in many different fields, I think it's actually a superpower to be able to hold a picture and say, this is the thing that we're talking about. And I'm also really, tickled to know that so many leaders that I work with on a, day-to-day basis, they're very visual people. So I think design, and that's a small example, right? Like bringing clarity to that complexity through just drawing a simple diagram or pictures. That's one way that, that we can help. The other is to, I think, bring people around tables to have more productive conversations about what it is that we're trying to unpick, and facilitate a step-by-step conversation to really kind of tackle complexity and focus people on, a few key areas. It could be your, focusing them on the user's experience. Yes, we're talking about, migrating from this to that and this system coming in, but at the end of the day, what is it that we're trying to deliver as an outcome? That always stops people in their tracks, and it really kind of brings some calmness and sense to the situation, even in the most complex environments.
I want to talk about your leadership style, because you're a designer, but you're also a leader. And I would like to understand in what way design philosophy, you said design mindset, has really influenced your way of going about leading teams, or leading an organization, or leading, a function.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because do I have a design philosophy? I'm not sure if I have a design philosophy, but I'm a maker at heart, and I really like getting on with things without necessarily reading the manual about it, or thinking too much about the philosophy behind it. So my main kind of drive is to make things and see if this sticks. So I make something, put it out and say, let's have a look and see if this is working. And I think obviously that's not always the thing that works, and you need to try different approaches, you need to try strategies. So that's my growth journey as well, is to learn what are the different tools you can kind of bring into your leadership or your design skill set, essentially. But as a kind of maker, like building a team, putting it together, has been interesting to say, okay, this is an experiment. It's not a big kind of design, and it's more of let's make this, let's bring in, a few really, really good people to start making, like the making of a team, essentially, and take it from there and see, is this working? What else are we missing? Can we add to it, and can we build and iterate as we go, rather than starting off with a blueprint and say, this is, the exact spec to with which we're hiring and how this is going to work. There's a book, I forget the writer now, it's called Sense and Respond. It's more of a product management book, but I really like the ethos behind it.
How's it called?
Sense and Respond. So you get a feel for, what's happening, and you respond to it. And it's, I'm not a, person with a 5-year plan or big kind of, massive kind of visions to say, this is exactly where we're going. I do have a vision, but I also like feeling and seeing how that's actually sticking and adapting. Exactly. I think that's really important.
And in what way your team responds to that approach?
I think I've been lucky enough to build my team up from scratch, which is, a big privilege. So I think in the hiring, at Genomics England, I've been quite open that we are the first team of its kind doing this type of work in Genomics England, but I think also in life sciences, this is quite a new thing and a rare thing in many ways, at the scale that we're doing it and the impact that we're having in the organization. And I think that requires an adaptive mindset, because it's a learning organization. We're working with new people who have not worked with design before or with digital before. And the things that we know from our past, I come with a huge baggage of 7 years working in a big tech firm. Some of those things that I used to do don't really work in a business like Genomics England. And it's really, I really enjoy it actually to see, okay, let's try this. Did this method work? No. Okay, what actually resonates? Can we actually learn from each other? So I really value building a community of designers and researchers, and we meet on a weekly basis and say, okay, I tried this technique with the SMEs, so subject matter experts, and this resonated, this didn't. What can we learn from each other and share that with one another? It's been fairly successful, and there's been some hiccups on the way, as always, but I take that to, I chalk it up to learning.
What was the major challenge connected to being a new design team in an organization like this? What was the struggle?
I think the biggest struggle was, and maybe I underestimated this a little bit, how little there was of, there was nothing really. If you think about, when you join a team, there are, rituals, there are tools, there are processes, and there's a bit of a kind of running track, and you jump on the train and off you go. We had to build all of the train tracks, and I used to run retros earlier on in my team on quite a regular basis in our formation, just to kind of get a feel for, what is it like to be a designer on the ground. And I can't remember, it was a brainstorm, so obviously there were no names on post-it, but someone said, having a fast train without tracks is actually not a good thing. No. And I thought, that's a fantastic point. And because I was so focused on bringing in really good people, and, then I had to build the tracks at the same time. Yeah. That's it. So we've been, working on our tracks as well, and that was a good learning for me. But yeah, it's difficult to work without the tracks. You need to lay, I think, some tracks to set some things going before you scale the team too big.
Why do you think Genomics England decided to invest in a design team? it's not a little investment, so why?
It's not. I think we've been lucky in the sense that the leadership coming in came from an understanding of, the value that design adds. So our previous CEO came from background of McKinsey, Quantum Black, and my boss, Raki Rajani, our kind of chief digital and strategy officer, she also obviously used to lead design teams, and she understands the value that brings to the team. So I think I owe it to them that the initial case they made for design and research to be there made my job obviously a lot easier, because they hired me in then to build out a team.
It gave you a recover, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important for that initial kind of seed of the team. But obviously, I don't think they knew that the team was going to be growing to this size and making this type of impact. I didn't know either. But I think that initial, the group that I told you about, the change makers, the people that came in.
I know, but they don't know.
So the initial few people that I brought in, they really made the change work, and we got stuck in. And I think I'm not a big advocate of advocacy in design and just giving talks about it, or like I said, I'm a maker at heart. So we just got stuck in. I basically just sniffed around and said, these are the key strategic areas we should have people in, where design can actually make an impact, because design can't make an impact everywhere. But we showed it, and the business liked what they saw, I think, and it grew organically from that point on. And I think the more people wanted to get the outcomes that we were getting through design, there was more demand, and that demand increases, on a day-by-day basis.
How do you prioritize the place where there is the highest chance of impact?
That's an ongoing, something that we tweak on an ongoing basis as well. I think appetite is really important from the stakeholders to, want to make the work happen. So that's really, really, really key. And I think if there's a really kind of complex seeming problem that we think can be simplified through simple act of, facilitation or visualization, we kind of take some bets and test the water and see, if there's opportunity in there to get in through a small opportunity and see if we can widen that gap. So Maria, one of our designers in the team, calls it, work in the cracks, that's where the light gets in. And I really like that saying, because we find the crack, we get in, we do the work, and that creates more opportunity. So it's a bit of kind of, trial and error, bit of kind of strategically understanding what's important for the business and where we can make the biggest impact. And sometimes it's also walking back from the projects. And, if we've tried a quarter, 2 quarters, and we did our best and it's not taking, it's also, I think, knowing when to kind of walk back and redeploy your powers somewhere else.
That's important. Yeah, I agree. Okay, what's one thing that changed everything for you in your career?
This one is, I thought about this one a lot. The pandemic has been quite foundational for me, I think, in many ways, both for work, but also in terms of my kind of broader life and outlook on life. I have been a pretty kind of strong workhorse, I think, until very recently. And I still am to a certain extent, but maybe pandemic has changed my focus from purely focusing on my career and success as a success metric for life, but to actually just step back and say, there are other facets to my life, and, you know, am I actually a full person, or am I equating my success and happiness with just my work and my career? I've had a pretty successful career, and you know, had amazing opportunities. I've been really, really lucky. But I think being at home in the pandemic, and actually then, you know, seeing what I was missing out from family and hobbies and everything else, life perspective, has been quite fundamental in my way of thinking and change.
Do you have any regrets in respect to your career or life?
Career regrets. I don't think I've learned a lot from, you know, every step of my journey, so not many career regrets. But I think in terms of my personal growth, my biggest regret is not learning to ask for help sooner. Because I just wanted to be very strong, and I was very strong, and I was able to do a lot of things. But I remember talking to a coach, and they said, you know, you have your limits, right? Like, you can't do everything. And I thought, this is such an unfeminist thing to say. Like, I can do anything. And, you know, all the years of kind of reading Cosmo and Cosmopolitan and, you know, all of those things, I'm like, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And, you know, I think people are fundamentally social creatures. I'm a bit of an introvert, but I think that doesn't make me any less social than any other human being. So I think, yeah, I wish I learned to ask for help sooner, because people love helping, and you also love receiving help. Like, I think it's a really powerful, very human thing to do.
Is there any learning that you treasure that you would like to share with the people that are watching this?
I think one of the things that I learned is that everyone deals with something inside, and their own gremlins, and, you know, everyone comes from a different background, different thinking method, different everything, and everybody at any given point is doing the best they can with the resources that they have available to them, and nobody's setting out to be difficult or be a pain. And I think that compassion is really important when you're working with people. I didn't know I was going to work with this many people in design school. They don't teach you this, at least in the schools that I went to. Obviously, maybe with Ivrea, we talked a little bit more about users, but when I was studying visual communication design, there was very little emphasis on how you work with people and how do you, you know, facilitate, how do you bring people together. I think it's really important to know that about people. We always say as designers, you know, you are not your user, and go and understand. And that's really true for your colleagues and your stakeholders as well. It's really important to understand, I think, people's motivations, where they may be coming from, and get to know them before you dive straight into work. And this is something that I grapple with a lot as a maker, because my prime motivation is, let's just get going. But I think maybe before you get going, get to know the people a little bit, understand them, ask them a few questions about, you know, what motivates them, what triggers them. I think it's really, really important. It's a good kind of, it forms a good basis for a healthy, sustainable relationship.
Yeah, that's a golden nugget, yeah. I have one last question, which is about the future. What's your hope for the future, for the design practice at large?
I think for design practice, I see a lot of the new generation of designers coming in with a very kind of strong point of view about the world and what's right and what needs to happen and change. And that really fills my heart with hope. We have a lot of, you know, conversations about the ethical implications of our work and what's our impact on society, what's, you know, sustainability. And these are big topics, and it's really encouraging to see that, you know, a new generation of designers are really enthused about this topic. You know, when I was coming up, it was more around, you know, what's the latest iOS gizmos that came up, and let's watch Apple, you know,
launching whatever.
And launching, exactly, just glued to the screens. I think the conversation is changing, which is really, really encouraging to see. So I think I'm quite hopeful that we're moving in the right direction and considering the impacts of our actions. And I really hope that, that kind of thinking actually goes beyond just designers. And I think we've talked about it a little bit around, as you do things, people see it and they want to do more of it. And I do believe in the power of design and helping people see things from a different perspective. And I think it's going to be good, the change that we bring to the world.
Nice. Well, Öznur, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to share it with your network. And if you want to support my work, please subscribe to designmavericks.substack.com. See you next week.